Hey everyone, welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, author and creator of Naked Communication, and I'm so psyched you're here. This show is all about taking charge of your life in new and inspired ways to create a life you deeply love. It's about being more you in all areas of your life, more courageous, more free, more alive, more naked. I'll be sharing stories and advice from amazing people around the world who are up to incredible things on how they are successfully breaking free from fear and old patterns in order to create incredible relationships and impactful lives so that you can do the same. This is the place to be inspired to live a courageous and naked life. Let's do this. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Naked Conversations. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, and I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. But before I do, I want you to know that this is episode 33. So you can go to the show notes at sagebhobbs.com/episode-33 if you want to know more about today's guest or any of the topics that we cover, or if you want to explore other episodes, find out how to work with me, check out my book. Any of that stuff can be found over at sagebhobbs.com. And this particular episode is at sagebhobbs.com/episode-33. I also wanted to let those of you who are here every week listening, which I so appreciate, thank you for being a part of this conversation. I wanted to let you know that I am going to be traveling this summer quite a bit. We're doing a trip of a lifetime that we've been wanting to do for quite some time with our kids, which is to go over to Europe for 6 weeks and spend some time living in Spain, visiting with friends and old college roommates in London and France. And I am thinking about taking you along with me via Instagram. And I'm just playing with these Instagram stories and seeing if that might be a fun way to stay connected easily and show you kind of the behind the scenes of what it's like for me to fulfill a dream, push my edges with my children, work from abroad, integrate this with the dream of a kind of expansive freedom lifestyle. My husband's a teacher. Our wealth really comes in time, and so we really try and use it and maximize it to have these experiences together. So if you're not with me over on Instagram already and you're interested in checking that out, come find me over there, Sage B. Hobbs. I'm not a huge social person, but I do enjoy Insta, and I'm trying to engage there a bit more and share this adventure with you this summer. It also means that the Naked Conversations podcast may be a little bit more sporadic this summer. I'm trying to figure out how that'll look. So if you are on my newsletter list, I will always be emailing out when a new episode goes live. If you subscribe over on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you listen, you'll also know when a new episode goes live, but I might be missing some weeks while I'm flying over the sea. So thanks so much for being a part of this and for riding the waves with me. So today's guest is Sheena Yap. And Sheena is a blogger, a podcaster herself. Her show is called the Tao of Self-Confidence, and I will link to that in the show notes. She's a self-confidence consultant, an author and speaker whose sole purpose, drive, and passion is to help build women's self-confidence from the ground up. And I was excited to have her on the show for a couple of reasons. One, because self-confidence is an ongoing theme with every woman I ever work with, no matter how smart or accomplished, brilliant, successful, what they've achieved in their lives, they always have these areas, these shadowy places where they are doubting themselves. And I know that I struggle with that myself at times. I see it with my friends, my colleagues, and my clients. And so I loved that that was the sole thing that Sheena was exploring. She currently inspires women every day through her podcast called the Tao of Self-Confidence. She posts, I think, 5 episodes a week. They're short, they're sweet, and they're always people's stories. She interviews various women about their inner journey to self-confidence. I think she's interviewed over 500 women at this point. And I also really was curious and intrigued by Sheena's story and desire to shine a different light on Asian women and to really have them be seen beyond the typical or stereotypical roles or messages that are often conveyed. And she really taught me some things about that in today's conversation that I didn't really know. And I was grateful for her peeling back the layers and being more naked herself to share about what has been like to be an Asian woman and the messages she felt she received from her family and from society. And she's lived in various parts of the world. She's lived in Toronto and the Philippines, but is herself, I believe, of Chinese descent. So she has this multicultural, feminist perspective that I really appreciated learning more about. So I hope you enjoy today's episode with Sheena Yap. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Naked Conversations. I have a guest with me today that I'm really excited to introduce you to. Hi, Sheena. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Sage. Thanks for having me. Really honored to be here today.
Yay. Sheena is a fellow podcaster, and it was funny, before I started record on this, she was guiding me on some technical challenges. So I appreciate your patience while we get started. And this is the first time we've met, so I really appreciate you being flexible, Sheena.
No worries.
So I like to start this out with a question I ask everyone, and it usually makes people go, for a minute. And then we'll dive into your work and how you came to do your work. But before we do, this is Naked Conversations, and living a naked life is really about being courageous and fully self-expressed, which ties in beautifully with your subject of self-confidence. So I really like to ask people, what does courage mean to you?
Courage for me is, doing the things that you're scared of, especially if it's something that you really want to do but are too afraid to do it. It's just, taking that first step or just starting something, especially as women, especially as Asian women. We've been taught to just live one way of life, not realizing there's so many other ways. And when we tend to step out of that box or out of our comfort zone, we feel scared. But actually stepping out of that is actually courageous, right? Mm-hmm. And some people actually dumb it down. Like, I remember a while back, I was interviewing this lady who quit her job to start her own business. And people don't see that as success on its own, because it's really hard for people to take that leap of faith, especially going into the unknown. You have no clue what's going to happen, but it's also a great feeling, right? Anything can happen. And just, taking the action to say, I'm quitting to do something that I love is courage within itself and a success within itself. So for me, it's like just doing the things that you're scared of. Like, I still have a million things that I'm scared of, but it takes baby steps, and that's fine, right? It takes baby steps. You don't have to take big leaps of courage. You can take small leaps, small baby steps. And because those little baby steps actually yield to the big results that you have in your life.
I love that. The baby steps actually yield to the big results. And I also really like that you broke that down, because I think a lot of people think of it as a huge jump to be courageous versus this taking of steps, just moving in that direction.
Not a problem.
Is huge, right? Yeah. It's how you begin. It's how anybody begins anything.
I used to be that way too. I used to think, if I didn't take such a big leap, I'm a failure, right? And I'm sure everyone has thought about that to themselves, and then kind of like shame themselves and put themselves down. But, just taking one little step actually makes a big difference in your life. The more you take little steps, like, you'll have that big result.
Yeah, totally. And I think that we actually think we need to make a big leap, and we need to, on the first jump, land in huge success. It's like we think we need to get from A to Z and skip everything in between. We just need to jump right into the ultimate pinnacle of the end goal. And I don't think that's realistic. And I think it sets us up, like you said, for a sense of shame or failure. So awesome. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you came to do it.
So about 3 years ago, I created my podcast, which is called the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I interview women, especially women of Asian descent, about their journey to self-confidence. And, one of the reasons why I started it was because I wanted a show where I could relate to other Asian women about how they feel about their confidence and how they can overcome it. And it was really hard for me to find it. I mean, it's like there's hardly any, and it's like there's no Asian women that are celebrated for their achievements. And sometimes when you can't find it, you got to create it yourself, right? And that's how I came about it. And, I also had my own issues with self-confidence and self-esteem, growing up in an Asian family. You're told to just go to school, get a job, get married, never rock the boat. And I knew that wasn't a life that I wanted to live. I always knew there was something more out there than just being in my cubicle. Not that there's anything wrong with having a job, but if it's something that you hate going to, then yeah, things have to change. And so, that's what I currently do. I love it. I love hearing women's stories. I love meeting new people. I mean, I love podcasting. It's, for me, the greatest platform to express your views, your voice, and to spread a good message around the world.
Yeah. I love it too. I since I started mine, I've had such a good time. I mean, that sounds silly, a good time, but really, like, it has been such a pleasure and an honor to meet women that I never would otherwise meet, and to really reach out to them and connect and find our commonalities and to find our differences and to share our voices and our stories. It's been just like an exciting journey, and to know that we can provide that for people around the world, to me, is really liberating. So I like that you mentioned podcast in that. So you have a show. It's called the Tao of Self-Confidence. How'd you come up with that name? I love to know how people name things.
So, funny story. That was actually the original name. I had a horrible name for it. I was actually going to call it the stripper because it was like to strip your limiting beliefs away. But, I'm glad that I invested in a group of podcasters who can give me honest feedback and tell me you're going to draw the wrong crowd. It's not that great. And actually, I got really mad because I was like, what's wrong with them? This is a great idea. And then I thought about it and it was just terrible. So I had to
So you were willing to go through the process of feeling anger to being open-minded. It's awesome.
like the ego gets to us and you have to realize these people are telling you the honest truth and they're more experienced and they do it because they want to see your success, right? So, it's great to be surrounded with people who need to tell you what's wrong versus hearing what you want to hear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get back to the drawing board and I had a friend who helped me. And I also, went through like the iTunes library to see, certain titles that would pop out. And I have a friend who's a spiritual healer and she mentioned you need to have a word in there that starts with a C. I was like, okay. And then saw a lot of people on podcasts having the word, the art of this, the art of that. And I wanted to have it more geared towards an Asian audience. So I found the word the Tao, which is the way. And then out of nowhere, the word confidence just popped out and then just everything fell into place.
Awesome.
But yeah, my first name was terrible. The artwork was not engaging, or it definitely would have drawn the wrong crowd.
Well, I'm laughing too because I've had that same sort of spiral of thought and asking a lot of people because my book is called Naked Communication and then my podcast is called Naked Conversations. And what shows that it was actually my husband's idea, the naked idea. It was definitely edgy and punchy. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to attract like a whole bunch of perverts, basically? You know what I mean? Was my thought. But it was really resonant for me around similar to what you're saying. For me, my work is all about like peeling back the layers of our stories and the things that have held us back and the things we don't even know are holding us back in order to really show up powerfully and courageously and self-express as who we are and to have our relationships come from that place so they're honest and real and naked. But I wonder what would have happened if I'd put it out to a different audience and seen what kind of feedback I got. So far, it hasn't drawn all the perverts, so we're doing okay. But the stripper might be even a little bit more edgy. So I think the Tao of Self-Confidence is super, to me, it was very elegant and inviting. And it was very clear what you'd be looking at and talking about. And I think that's really helpful.
Thank you.
And the reason I was drawn to you, in the work that I do, where I think every woman that I've worked with for years struggles with this issue of self-confidence. It's like, even if they have the accolades and the success and the letters behind their name and the accomplishments, when we dig into it, there's areas of their lives where they struggle with this issue. And actually, I had one of them who was super, by all external measures, successful, great career, that made a difference in the world, 2 beautiful kids, happy husband, looks good from the outside. And she said, is anyone you work with really self-confident? Like, do you actually know a self-confident woman? And it gave me pause where I had to think about, it's almost like my experience has been the more successful some of these women are, the more the imposter syndrome kind of kicks in, where the self-doubt sort of travels with them at the higher level. And so I wonder if you could kind of define for us what self-confidence even means to you and some of the things that you have discovered in interviewing. You've interviewed over 500 women on this topic. So I'm curious, what is self-confidence and what have you found out through your interviews?
Self-confidence isn't being always positive, feeling like you're 100%. It's just actually being yourself. If you're vulnerable, right? If you're mad, you're mad. If you're happy, you're happy. Confidence is not like a linear line. It's going to be like a roller coaster. Some days we're up, some days we're down. But we have to keep learning to love ourselves for who we are completely, including the flaws, the mistakes we make. It's not always just the good. It's the good, bad, and the ugly. And that's what actually makes us beautiful. I used to think my weaknesses is actually what brought me down, but it wasn't, right? We all have something that we're good at and we have something that we're terrible at. And that's okay, right? And that's why each person's made differently. And, the more we can realize to love who we are, like who we really, truly are, and just be more authentic in the world, the more confidence we can have. You can be confident and tell people you're not good at this thing. And, you feel more free than trying to impress people that you are good at something that you're not. So, it's not always just like you're loud, you're happy, you're positive all the time, because not everyone's going to always be that positive. We're going to have days where we're going to be negative, but we just learn to just check on ourselves and realize, you know what, if you feel that way, that's fine. But, you draw the line as to when you stop that and move forward. So, yeah, that's for me what confidence really is, just learning to be yourself, your authentic self, learning to love your authentic self and being okay with it. The more you can be real with people, the more you can attract authenticity in your life.
Let's talk about that for a second. The more you can be real with people, the more you can attract authenticity in your life. Will you share a little bit more about what that looks like and how you've come to do that more?
Yeah, one thing was really loving myself for who I am. I was really bad at putting myself down, shaming myself for not accomplishing like half the things I've interviewed women on. I always felt like I was a failure, and I was always playing small, even from like 5 years old. The teacher failed me for coloring outside the lines. So, that screwed me over for a little bit, but things happen, right? Like I didn't realize how much that affected me, and nobody realizes that like something in their childhood can really affect them in their present life. But learning to dig deep and learning to work on myself and, surround myself with people who can tell me the truth versus, hearing what I want to hear, you start noticing, people who are there for you and people who aren't, people who are genuine and people who aren't genuine, right? And it's not like you'll know it in a day. It takes work, right? I still work on it every single day. It's not like I'm always super confident. I still doubt myself. There's times I still kind of shame myself, but I learned to quickly switch that and tell myself, you know what, you're okay. Don't worry about it. Everything will work out. Everything will fall into place. Everything will work in your favor, right? And, I feel better, just having simple like affirmations I tell myself, because not everyone wakes up saying, oh, I'm super confident today. There's going to be a day where like, I don't look good today. I have a pimple on my nose. I look ugly. We tell ourselves all these things, but it's just learning to work on yourself, loving yourself, digging deep as to why certain things happen or why you are the way you are really can open your eyes to something different. Having that awareness is really important. Because then when you have that awareness, then you can figure out, well, how can I solve this, right? How can I fix this? How can I be a better person? How can I get out of this funk that I'm in? So, yeah.
Right. Without the awareness, you're still functioning unconsciously, like carrying around that story from when you were 5 and I laughed, but it's actually super true that these things have huge lasting implications. Things like when you're 5 years old and you get in trouble for coloring outside of the lines, if we don't see them, if they're just kind of functioning below the surface and guiding how we behave, then they carry with us for years, So that's oftentimes things I work with women on actually is, okay, wow, where did that just come from? I'll say, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't seem like the response of a 40-year-old, super successful, loving woman. That seems like the response of something like the 7-year-old self. You know what I mean? So since you sort of started this journey and have started peeling back, stripping back, as your original name would imply, to the core of yourself and to really getting clear about who you are and why you love yourself for your flaws and your strengths, have your relationships shifted? Like you said, it draws in more authenticity or more genuine people. How has it impacted your relationships when you've gotten more in touch with your true self?
Well, for me, it's like the people who don't serve, who bring me down, I tend not to hang around with them. It's not that it really bothers me. I just learn to know that I want to surround myself with good people. And it's not like I need 10 million people around me. I select a good few people that I can count on, who have my back and I have theirs at the same time. And I'm really grateful that I have so many people that I can call as true friends, right? Because I've done that work, who I can, if I need anything, they're right there for me, and I can do the same for them. And my family has also been like that because we've always been honest with each other. And if sometimes we scream at each other or we fight, we're honest about it. And, every family argues, right? But at the same time, every family has each other's back. So for me, that's really important. And just, learning, there's just like energy that you can feel when you meet someone, even if it's just through a picture on Facebook or Instagram. Like there's just something about them that you can't really explain, but it's there. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, it's weird, but at the same time, it makes sense once you meet them or talk to them.
So somehow there's a piece of your intuition that also comes into play around who really you want to consciously bring into your life, whom you feel supported by, who you feel like will have your back, and who really values you for you. And so it sounds like you've paid more attention to choosing the people in your life versus like just having an accidental community. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's like quality over quantity.
Yes, totally. I turned 40 this past year, and that's something I've been really thinking about lately is this. I have 2 kids and I'm married and I run my own business, and how do I use my time? Just really consciously thinking about how do I want to be intentional with my time. And one thing I realized is I love people. Like I'm so into having a support crew and a community. And through growing my business, I've made some really lovely new friends. And I'm also really clear that my time is my most valuable resource. And I really have noticed that I go deep versus wide when it comes to friendships and relationships. Like I don't really have as much time as I'd love to even spend with the people I do love. Right. So I've gotten clearer, just what you're saying, the quality over the quantity is important to me at this stage of my life where I feel like my time is really precious. Something that I wondered about before, and I want to jump back to, is you started talking about that you really wanted to bring voice to Asian women's experiences, and that there's some messaging that you feel that Asian women get around not rocking the boat and playing by the rules and things like that. And I wanted to know, A, what your parents thought when you did the rock the boat and stepped into this podcasting world as a career, because obviously that's atypical. And B, if you could speak a little bit more to what some of those messages are for those who are listening who aren't within the Asian community, but may really resonate within their own cultural background around the messages they've received.
Okay. Well, so when I decided to quit my job and just start doing things on my own, my parents were definitely not happy. They were like, are you crazy? You're already successful. Why would you do that? But what they see as success is getting a good education and, working a job till like you're 60. And I just couldn't see myself doing that. Right. I kept on picturing it and I just couldn't see it.
Right.
Like I couldn't see myself working at a desk till I was 60, and I knew something had to change. And yeah, I made some rash decisions, but everything happens for a reason. And, sometimes you do have to take that leap of faith. And, when your parents or your family sees that you're doing something bigger than yourself, they can realize like it's not as bad as they think, right? You're helping the world. They see messages that I get from people and they realize like, oh, that's great that you're doing something different. It's great that you're actually contributing to society in a positive way, because I've always wanted to help people in some way, shape, or form. I just didn't know how, until podcasting. So for me, having that big purpose was huge because, having a big purpose also gives you that confidence to go out there and make that bold move because it's something bigger than yourself. So that's one thing, especially with people in other cultures. If you have a huge purpose as to why you're doing the things you do, it makes things a lot easier in your part, even if there's outside noise or distractions or negative forces. You just keep pushing. And even after interviewing so many women, their purpose is actually what held them to keep going and to have that confidence.
Okay. So that's one of the lessons you got from them. So initially your parents were like, what? And then you brought them along as they saw that the work you were doing was bigger than you and really valuable to others. They just sort of needed to understand it better and see the value in it. And then they were more supportive.
Yeah. Like they just need to see there was something bigger than just trying to be financially secure. And because when you first start out, you don't know what you're doing, right? There's no stable income. You just like go flow. So you just keep working at it, right? Especially if it's something you believe in, you keep doing it until you see the end result. I remember reading an article about Tofurky.
Tofurky. Oh my gosh. Right.
Yeah. The first 10 years, they only made $31,000. And, most normal businesses would have folded the company, but because they had a huge vision to educate people about having plant-based diets and meals, why it's better for the environment, in the long run, they kept going. And now it's like a multi-million-dollar business. So it's up to you. Do you have that confidence to keep going when you truly believe in that purpose? That decision's up to you.
Yeah. And this piece around that we really have different definitions of success, that it sounds like there was some pretty strong messaging in your family that was success is based on getting a degree and being financially secure. And beyond that, it was like, whoa, hold on. You're breaking the rules. You're bending the norms in some ways. And I love just calling attention to that because I think that when I talk to women who are leading in different ways, and I think you are one of these women, it takes something to stand apart, to try something different than is the norm, to create something from nothing, to try and build something you want to express and share, it really, really does take something, and not everybody is going to understand why you would do that. So you have to really feel A, connected to your own vision, and B, okay with talking to the people you love along the way around how they can come to understand it better. That's something I feel like I talk to people about a lot, is how to actually have those conversations, the conversations with their husbands, their spouses, their partners, their parents, their colleagues, as to why they're making the choices they're making. So what have you learned from all these women? So that you've learned that purpose is a big part of confidence. Are there other things that have been like themes that have come up in these conversations?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So one of the things I mentioned, that I interview women of Asian descent, having that relatability factor really helps other Asian women out there, along with, women in general. But, as Asian women, we feel like we're never enough. We feel like we always have to people please. We always feel like we have to be good just so that we don't shame other people. And that really hurts us. And, I get messages every day saying, I'm glad you created this show. It was something that I'm looking for. And I can relate to so many stories. So, having that relatability factor really helps them. So it makes them feel like they're not alone, and that they can actually overcome it, because they can hear women's stories that, hey, a single mom can overcome this, I can overcome this. 20-year-old grad student was able to overcome it, I can overcome it. It didn't matter. There was a story that they can relate to and realize if one person can do it, anyone else can. Another great thing is that most successful women that I interview had no clue how they started their business. They just knew they wanted to do something different and just figured it out along the way. And that was huge for me, because I used to feel like I need to figure everything out before I start.
Mm-hmm.
Analysis paralysis. But most women was just like, they started something and they were like, all right, I'll just figure it out along the way, right? And it's amazing what happens when you just figure everything out along the way. It's just like, wow, I didn't even realize I had it in me. So that was one major lesson I learned myself, and hopefully other women can relate to as well. And learning to use your intuition is huge, right? We're so against using our intuition because we feel like our intuition is going to take us to the wrong path. And sometimes it may look like that, but in the end, it'll take you to the right path, right? Just because it doesn't look like what we see in our head doesn't mean it's wrong or it's going to fail. Sometimes, things happen for a reason. We can't explain it, but later on, it'll all make sense. So that's another thing I learned, using your intuition is really powerful. And, just being okay to feel what you feel, right? I mean, one thing I ask women is, how do they feel after they're discovering self-confidence? And most of them are like, I'm not always confident every day, but I work on myself every day, right? And, I love that people are honest enough to say that, right? Because, just for me, confidence is like an everyday journey. It's not like every day is going to be awesome and 100% okay, and you're going to be super energized. These days where you just don't even feel like doing anything, or you want to shut the world out and just binge watch on Netflix, and that's okay.
Right.
It's just learning to accept who you are fully, right? The women I interviewed, they learned to love themselves. And when I mean love themselves, love the good parts and the bad parts. Because you gotta love yourself fully in order to attract the same people who will love you just the way you are, right? Just not being afraid to be your true, authentic self, I think is huge. Especially in the world of social media, it's we see awesome pictures on Instagram. We're like, I wish I had that life. But we don't even realize how edited that life is. We don't even know if that life is true or not. So we just have to learn to not compare ourselves. And yes, it's easier than done because I get swept up with all the Instagram pictures. But we just have to learn, be happy with who you are, be happy with the present moment, be grateful, and you'll get there. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Just focus on yourself. And then, like I mentioned, baby steps. A lot of these women took baby steps to build their confidence. Didn't happen in a day, like how Rome wasn't built in a day. So you have to realize confidence won't be built in a day. It takes baby steps, might take days, months, years. But the more and more you build on it, the better you'll become.
And it really might be an everyday, forever game, is what you're saying, too. It might take months, it might take years. It might just be, you said confidence is an everyday journey. And I think that idea is very freeing in some ways, that maybe there's not a place to arrive at, but that every day we just look at, okay, how can we appreciate the now? How can we listen to ourselves more fully? How can we show ourselves more compassion? How can we do the work to explore what's holding us back? How can we surround ourselves with people who believe in us? How can we take baby steps towards a bigger vision, right? If we're doing all of those things, we're always on that journey to greater self-confidence. And I guess a question behind this is maybe it seems so obvious, but I think it's worth exploring. Like, why is self-confidence so important? What's the flip side of not having it?
I don't know if there's a flip side of not having it. I guess the flip side is you're safe, right? You're not taking risks, but then at the same time, you're not enjoying the life that you want to live, right? Because we're afraid of what other people might think of us, or we get laughed at. So, having that confidence, you get to go out there and live the life that you want. Like, you can create that life that you want according to what you want to do, whether it's to travel the world, to be a stay-at-home mom, to be a businesswoman. There's nothing too big or too small. It depends on what makes you truly happy versus trying to make other people happy. And that's the thing, right? We're so, especially, being raised as an Asian woman, it's like we've been programmed to keep making others happy. And that means sacrificing our own happiness, which is wrong, right? In order to make others happy, we have to start with ourselves, and that happiness overflows to other people. And it's not like it was wrong for our past relatives, parents, aunts, whoever, to teach us that way. It's like it's been passed on from generations and generations. They didn't know any better, so they only teach you what they've only been taught. And us to change the way we see things and think things and realize there's more out there than just living one way of life. There's actually unlimited ways of living the life that you want. It's just learning to be aware of it and figuring out, how am I going to go out after the life that I want?
Yeah. I think that that's the flip side, actually, is if you don't look for all the ways to build and bolster your own self-confidence, the flip side is potentially a really unsatisfying, unhappy, stagnant life that's completely guided by other people's desires. And that sounds, that might sound dramatic, but it's really what I've seen. There's a sense of like kind of resignation or stagnation, lack of vitality, lack of inspiration. And so I love just exploring, well, what is the cost really if we don't look at how we want to bolster our own self-confidence, how we want to feel good in our own skin, how we want to live what I call a more naked life. There really is a cost to it. So do you see that when women are telling you their stories about where they were and where they came to be?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of women, when they felt that they had no confidence, they felt like they were trapped in their own lives. Some women felt like they were trapped in marriages that didn't serve them. Some got bullied. Some women, were physically and sexually abused. Like, there's so many different scenarios, but, they found that confidence and, learning to love themselves to go out there and change your situation for the better, right? And that's all we can do, right? Sometimes we're in the most horrible parts in our life, but, whatever goes down must come up, right? There's no other way to go than up when you're having the downtimes in your life. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it's just worth exploring, because I think that what I was getting at is I think that sometimes it sounds easy, right? Like, oh, let's just all be more confident and love ourselves more. And then I think the word is thrown around so much. What are the costs if we don't do that? What does it look like when we don't? And so I just wanted you to go there with me for a minute. If these women are also sharing the stories of the journey through the darkness before they felt a greater sense of self-confidence, because I've seen that a lot with women. I've seen it inside of myself, for sure. I wrote this whole book, and it's a great book. And when I was about to release it, I started to freak out. Like, oh my gosh, am I actually going to share this with people? You know what I mean? Like that sense of, and it was ironic because of course it's about being naked and vulnerable and real. And here I was going, do I really want to be that naked and vulnerable and real? And I think it's important to not pretend that even those of us who from outside appearance are very self-confident, there's been a journey to get there, and there still is. There still is. Like, I'm giving a talk this Thursday night. I have been preparing for it a lot. It's a newer talk for me, and I can feel those sort of old feelings of doubt or worry or wanting to please people come up again. So I just wanted to shed a little light on the fact that what you said, which I loved, is confidence is an everyday journey. And the flip side of not going on that journey can be feeling stuck or trapped or stagnant or unsatisfied or unhappy. So it's worth it. It's worth it to get in there and kind of get muddy and in the muck and the mire and explore, how can I feel more confident in all the parts of myself? I think it's a really valid and important question. That's what I was getting at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And so when you're talking about the messaging that Asian women get, when you mentioned Asian descent in all the women you've interviewed, have you found that to be like across various Asian communities? Is it Asian American? Is it internationally Asian from China to Japan to you're now living in the Philippines. You just moved back to the Philippines, which I love. I love that we've had guests from South Africa and, various parts of the world. It's exciting for me to be talking to you in the middle of your night. So thank you for being up. When I hear some of the messaging you're telling me, I'm like, okay, I'm not of Asian descent, but I can really resonate with women being taught to, stay within the lines and follow the rules and not rock the boat. And I'm just wondering if you feel that's more prominent inside of the Asian community or what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I mean, being Asian, it doesn't matter if you live in North America or not. It's, how you're brought up, right? It's like, make sure you look good in front of people, never shame the family, just do as you're told. Never rock the boat, never make any noise, never cause any ruckus. It's like if we go out there and do something on our own, it's considered wild or crazy. So, I mean, these are some of the things that most women, especially most Asian women, go through. And then especially, I really don't like how Asian women are viewed by society, right? They all think that all Asian women are submissive and quiet and just do as they're told. That affects a lot of Asian women and it affects how men see Asian women, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying all men view it as that, but there are a group of men who do that, right? And it's prevalent here in the Philippines, right? You see tourists with locals, right? And some of them are here because they think they'll just do whatever they want with them, and that's a sad truth, right? And most people don't talk about this, but it happens, right? It's really common here.
Yeah, I love that you're giving voice to that and being so honest about that. To me, you are beyond the conversations of self-confidence. There's this feeling I have about you, Sheena, that you're kind of like, you're definitely rocking the boat in the best of ways, right? Like, don't cause a ruckus. I mean, you're causing a ruckus just even in a good way, like an activist kind of way to say, hey, I have a real problem with how Asian women are portrayed internationally. I saw some of that actually when we were in Thailand. That was really an interesting thing for me to observe. As you said, tourists with local women. And I had a friend who was living there, who still lives there. She moved there, and having just some interesting conversations around what that looks like in the Thai society. I want to see done about that. Like, how do you see your work fitting into changing Asian stereotypes of women? And, for those who are listening, like, what do you want us to know? What do you want us to know, those who are non-Asian, if I can ask?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just having Asian representation that, we're strong women.
Yeah,
right?
awesome.
And that's the reason why I interview so many women with so many achievements. I want them to realize, like, they're worth more than that. And having that support system is huge, right? And representation matters, right? When they can look up to an Asian woman, whether it's a Japanese woman, a Vietnamese woman, even, Filipino woman, whoever, right, of Asian descent, when they can see that there's other ways I can make a living. There's other ways I can live a life. I don't have to go through all this crap, right? And it's going to take time, but, I can get there, right? I want them to see their own worth and realize that, they can do it. And it's for everyone else. I want them to realize not all women are submissive or quiet. And that's not what Asian women are. We're actually a lot stronger than you think. And, hearing stories from grandparents and grandmas, what they have been through to live the life that they can too. It's like, we're a lot stronger than we think. And we can go there and do the things that we want and live the lives that we want.
Sheena, that is badass.
Thanks.
Okay, so I love it because this is the first time we're actually talking in person, and I do believe in intuition. And there was like some weird thing that led me to you. Like, I think we're in the same podcasting community online, and then another podcaster, Sarah Dean, mentioned your show to me for some reason, and I don't even know exactly why, but I've been quite discerning around who comes on the show. And there was just something I was like, I need to talk to her. And now I'm listening to you and I'm like, it's way bigger than self-confidence, what you're talking about. Like, you are actually talking about changing the paradigm of how we see each other on the planet as women of various backgrounds. And that is so profoundly near and dear to my heart. And so I'm so excited to have your perspective, because it is incredibly powerful to say, hey, the show that I've created, the Tao of Self-Confidence, and the work that I'm doing is really not only about, it's twofold. It's threefold. It's multifaceted. It's really about women's self-confidence overall and how we can shine more brightly as who we really are and love ourselves more fully with less shame. And it's about really offering what you didn't see yourself, which is the representation of strong, courageous, successfully accomplished Asian women who are thereby showing the world that they aren't all demure and do good, stay in the lines types, I still keep thinking of little Sheena as a 5-year-old coloring outside the lines, and my heart just goes, oh. So I just really want to acknowledge that I think that your work is big and it's important. And I really appreciate that you were willing to answer that question with me, because I've been exploring way more deeply cultural competence and how it shows up and how I want to raise my kids with more cultural competent conversations, and how that's the talk that I'm giving actually. And I really do feel like not all voices are represented equally, obviously. So what you're doing is rocking the boat.
Thank you.
You're rocking the boat. It's great. Okay. So lastly, things I want to know where people can find out more about you. And I'll put that in the show notes over at sagebhobbs.com/podcast. And then I want to know if you want to leave people with any simple ways that they could boost their confidence.
Sure. So to start off, if anybody would love to listen to the podcast, it's called the Tao of Self-Confidence. It's on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Android phones, Spotify. So, most major podcast directories, you can see it or you can find it there. Or you can also look up my name on Google, Sheena Yap Chan. I'm like the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet, which actually helps me a lot. So
that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah. That's like super sweet of mine. But yeah, or you can go to our website, thetowofselfconfidence.com. You can check out past episodes, some resources and tools to help you with your journey to self-confidence, and some simple ways to boost your self-confidence. When you have days when you're doubting yourself, I say 3 things to myself. And affirmations are huge for me. And I don't need 100. I just say 3. It's really simple. It's I am loved,
yeah.
I am worthy, and I am enough. And I keep telling myself that until I feel better. And yeah, the first time is going to feel weird because you're like, why am I talking to myself saying these weird things? It's always going to feel weird when you're saying it for the first time. But the more you do it, the better you get and the more comfortable you are at saying it to yourself. So, simple affirmations like that are huge. Journaling's really good. I journal every day, even if it's just one sentence, I'll journal it. There's something about when you write out or type out your feelings, like you need to dump it on something, right? So having a journal really helps it. You're just expressing how you feel. And this is something that's just for you. You don't need to show it to everybody, right? This is something that's personal and you can say whatever you want. Like, if you say today, I felt so ugly today because, the dress I wore just didn't fit me properly. Just write it, right? You'll feel better about it. Just learning to express your feelings really makes a huge difference. Find your own way of meditation. I used to think meditating was like lying down, closing my eyes and listening to like meditation music, but I'd actually just fall asleep. So it wasn't for me. I was just like, I can't get this thing right? And I used to think I was such a failure because I did not meditate the right way. But actually, meditation is just learning to clear your head and just be peaceful with yourself. And for me, it was like running. Running outside really is my form of meditation. And, it's up to you to figure it out what you want to do, right? Or how you want to meditate. It could be running. It could be cleaning. It could be reading a book. Whatever it is, it's up to you to find that, right? There's certain things that will work for you and certain things that won't work for you. And it's up to you to check that out. And shameless plug, you can check out my podcast to get more self-confidence tips, right? These women have so many tips that can really help you boost your confidence. I've even used them in my own life because it makes sense, right? Something that's having, the attitude of gratitude. You got to be grateful for what you have. Especially, living in North America, we take for granted the most like basic things, like, having 3 meals a day, having a roof over our heads. For someone who's living in the Philippines, that's really considered a luxury considering the stories I've heard here. Having 3 meals a day to eat is actually a big luxury for some of the poorest people here in this country. So let's just learn to be grateful. And yeah, so I hope those are some quick tips to boost your confidence and surround yourself with good people, right? I love the podcasting community, to be honest, because it's very real and very positive and they're very honest and, it really helps me be a better person. So, having good people in your life is really huge.
I couldn't agree more with that. It's something I talk about a lot in my work and something I really put a lot of attention on in my own life, which is who do I want to spend my time with and how do they see me as even better than I see myself, so that when my confidence wavers, I have people who really pull me back in line for me to stay on mission and to really, really continue this work. So I'm really glad to have people like you doing this work out there with me. It's like this big international tribe of women who are really committed to women's voices and to us living powerfully and fully self-expressed. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, Sheena. It's really been a pleasure to get to know you.
Not a problem. It was really great being on the show today and having you as a guest. I'm really honored.
Yay. Hopefully we can do it again.
For sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Naked Conversations. Yay! It really means the world to me every time you show up. And if you want to know more about how to work with me personally and my coaching, you can check that out over at sagebhabs.com. You can also get some great free resources over there about how to make powerful requests and many blog posts full of resources for living a naked life, as well as grab a copy of my book, Naked Communication: Courageously Create the Relationships You Really Want. Thanks again. See you next time.